So, as you can see, even if I am a composer, I don't have this white curly wig, and this is no royal timbre. In our days, composers look nothing but ordinary. What's left from the good old days when composers were adored and endorsed by kings and queens is their passion and their curiosity for finding new and out of the ordinary sounds. This passion may have been with them since the day they were born, or it may come later in life. In my case, it was a miraculous mix of both. So let me tell you how I began my journey into the challenging world of music and how the science of composing inspired and helped me and my friends and partners to create a festival for new music and new arts. So I remember myself asking for a piano since I was 3 years old. I loved to sing all day long, and after some very, very applauded performances in the kindergarten, my parents gave in and bought me the piano. One sunny day, I saw the black instrument inside my living room, and I felt an immense joy. This joy was only surpassed by the moment I touched the key and heard a sound. I had a wow moment. I'm sure all of you had experienced the wow moment in your life. For me, the sound that grew and filled the entire room was the magic that transformed my whole life. I was 5 years old and totally amazed by the fact that a touch, a simple touch, my touch, could generate such beauty. This feeling of amazement stayed with me throughout my entire life and became the reference point of everything important I've ever done. If something raises up to that level of intensity, if it resonates inside my whole being, then I know it has value, I know it has meaning, and I know it's right for me. What I didn't know at that young age is that I had just discovered the first part of the algorithm of creation. An algorithm that applies to everything that's made from scratch, whether it's learning a new piano piece or writing a composition, a book, painting, developing a new scientific theory, organizing a festival, starting a business. Each one of these activities have in common one essential ingredient, a dream, a fact, or an idea that fills you with amazement, curiosity, and joy. I shall call that the fundamental emotion. Once you have identified your fundamental emotion, the next step is a pragmatic one. I shall call it the planning. For a child or a teenager, planning usually revolves around studying, or studying what they like. So in my case, attending the music high school was the necessary option. But planning also applies to everything we do. Schools have plans for what a student must learn at a specific age. Our parents are trying to plan our days since the moment we come into this world. But let me tell you a secret, they usually don't succeed. Especially when it comes to babies. You will try to plan the meals and the naps and the time outdoors, but they are simply dictating and planning everything for us. So, planning is the point where you make your dream real. Planning is fascinating. It is adrenaline and it is structure. But how do you plan? When you're young, the teachers do that for you. Thus, they always try to teach their students how to multiply in a certain amount of time. Or in music, I will teach my student how to play a certain piece by Bach, Chopin, or some other composer. But what about later in life? Playing the piano has taught me indeed something about planning, about timing my progress, or creating learning strategies from the moment I have a new score before my eyes. But when I began studying composition and I had to write my own scores, I was for the first time in my life in a very strange situation. We didn't have projects in school in the 90s. And the only creative moments were some homework in Romanian literature classes. So there I was, in front of the empty staves, and nobody was planning for me. At 17, I was the sole person responsible for the job. And all that freedom made me ecstatic and terrified in the same time. This is when I understood what planning was all about. Planning is shaping your fundamental emotion into a theoretical form that others would understand. It's about transforming feelings into ideas. But why is planning only the theoretical form? Because it's still not music. The sounds in your head must first come to life. The ideas are transformed into a physical substance, the sounds. This physical substance is written note by note on a piece of real paper. Then it's played by real instruments. And it must be listened by a real audience. In other words, you do the real work. So, how does a composer work? The answer looks very simple. You proceed according to the plan. You think of the big picture, and you permanently stay in contact with your fundamental emotion, so that every note you write will be charged with both knowledge and feelings. But this is when obstacles come into the scene. You may get stuck. You may get tired. You may have events in your life that need your attention. You may get sick, or you may get discouraged. When it comes to writing a new piece of music, you'll usually get the whole package, and cherry on top, an impossible deadline. So what do you do to keep going? You're stuck? Seek for inspiration. You're tired? Don't stop. Just like in sports. You're too busy? Organize your day. Let me tell you what I do when I get stuck. I look for inspiration by browsing the great masters' composition, and I analyze their solutions, and then I immerse into their music just like into a sea of beauty. But still, you're not there yet. The worst of all is the lack of confidence. This happened to every artist that had ever lived on this planet. There comes a point when you're just not sure of anything. You're vulnerable, and you feel weak. Your soul bows in front of the great music you're imagining, but your mind is just not up to the job. So, what do you do? Because it hurts. It hurts like hell, and it involves pain and tears and suffering and a lot of madness. You take a step back and return, like always, to the fundamental emotion that made you write the music in the first place. That should take you to the right answers. Then, you take a step forward and you become flexible. You realize the plan serves only as guidance, and it doesn't need to be observed in every detail. So you adjust the plan. It takes a lot of courage to admit it wasn't perfect. And it takes a lot of strength to bring in the changes. But you do it anyway, because you need to shape your fundamental emotion into a musical substance. And when you're done, that would be the final stage of the algorithm of creation. I shall call it the outcome. For a composer, this has two meanings. The first one, the piece is written. The music is completed, ready, finished. The second one is when you actually have your music performed in front of an audience. That's the ultimate test. But what's tested? And more important, what's the real measure of success? Like always, the fundamental emotion. When you hear your music for the first time, you should be able to recognize that primary feeling that triggered the entire process. Only when this circle is closed, the new musical piece is a success. It doesn't matter how many people are in the audience. If it's in Paris, London, New York, Vienna, Bucharest, or Salaj. It doesn't matter how many favorable reviews you get. All these social references do not matter. Success is when your fundamental emotion was transformed into musical substance that touches the sensitive chords of the audience. What comes next? Rewind, replay, feel the fundamental emotion, plan your work, meet the obstacles, embrace them, and wait for the final outcome to tell you if it was a success. So, enough with the theory. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how this algorithm of creation perfectly applies to a totally different area, music management. When you feel the need to give back to the society what you have learned, there are no limitations to what you can do. But you'd better take the roads less traveled by and make a festival for new music and contemporary arts. You get 200 people to experience a space they've never seen before. Sound and dance and visuals into a mesmerizing installation. You get 70 artists from 10 countries to show you art has no frontiers when it meets technologies. Just like this artist alters with her voice the colorful universe reflected onto the screen. And then you bring the most famous violinist in our country to an audience that had never experienced classical music before. And you have them hooked for life. Then you find about 10 young directors and you ask composers to write music for their silent short movies. And you become the first festival in Romania, maybe in Europe, that combines new silent short films with new contemporary classical music, and all of it is performed live. In about 3 editions, you have more than 1,000 people to experience your unique idea. So let me show you how that sounds. You bring about 50 volunteers every year and you make them very happy, and some of them really stand out and they want to show you that. And of course, you start it all with a fundamental emotion. Then you plan it, then you work on it, and then you have thousands of obstacles and you overcome it. And then much later, in a year or maybe later, you enjoy the outcome. You don't sleep, you don't eat for a few weeks, maybe months, but you are part of a team that inspires young people to create the sound of a generation, to create a brave new world for which they have many, many different names.
InnerSound is...
I don't have a word. Wait.
Surpriză.
Emoții.
Emoție.
Bucurie.
excited.
Energie.
Senzațional.
ceva frumos.
It's inspiring.
Wonderful in English, please.
Fericire!
So thank you.